While the biggest geopolitical story of 2026 just unfolded last week as Canada, the United States' largest and most important ally, has suddenly made a dramatic shift away from the US and is now pivoting to China for a brighter future. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney traveled to Beijing this week, marking the first time in nearly a decade a Canadian Prime Minister has visited China. It was a bold move for the Canadians, and social media has been on fire the past week as many Americans are collectively losing their mind with Canada's decision to pivot to China. But if you think this is a bluff from Canada, just listen to what Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand said this week. It is necessary for us to diversify our trading partners and to grow non-US trade by at least 50% over the next 10 years. This is not Canada hedging against the United States. This is a strategic reversal. But Prime Minister Mark Carney gave a simple yet profound quote that honestly explains this entire situation in the simplest way possible. "We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be." This quote sounds simple, but yet it explains everything you need to know about Canada's decision to shift closer to China. In a perfect world, the US and Canada would be like brothers and enjoy robust trade between the two nations. This is certainly how Canadians wish the world to be. But 9 months ago, Trump launched a trade war against the entire world, including its closest ally, Canada. Multiple Canadian industries from steel, aluminum, automotives, lumber, and copper were all hit with high US tariffs. Tariffs and global instability is one of the major reasons assets like the US dollar have declined and the price of gold has skyrocketed in the past 12 months. But stay tuned to the end of today's video and I'll explain how you can profit from this. But instead of working with Canada, the United States' most important trade partner, Trump threatened to annex the country and jokingly referred to it as the 51st state. Canadians started boycotting travel to the US. American liquor was pulled off the shelves and replaced with local Canadian brands. And it goes without saying, the United States' reputation in Canada, along with Canadian views of Trump, have soured to a historic low at the end of 2025. And this is where the second part of Carney's quote comes into play, because Canadians are now taking the world as it is and recognizing the United States under Trump is not a reliable trading partner for the immediate future. The one comparison I will give you with the United States, our relationship, this is no insight, is much more multifaceted, much deeper, much broader than it is with China. But yes, in terms of our relationship has progressed in recent months with China. It is more predictable, and you see results coming from that. This quote from the Canadian Prime Minister would have been unimaginable a year ago, but it's hard to find fault in calling China the more predictable and reliable trading partner. Trump has imposed, paused, exempted, and changed tariff policies with Canada no less than 6 times over the past year alone. These on-again, off-again tariff policies make it almost impossible for Canadian industries to do business with the US, as no business leader can plan ahead, and every day you are subject to the emotional feelings of the US president. In his effort to conquer Greenland, Trump once again turned on tariffs against his European allies, with 8 countries in Europe now facing tariffs as a penalty to force their hand and allow the United States to acquire Greenland. Last week, I shared this tweet from Michael McFaul, a former U.S. ambassador who wrote, "If Trump keeps acting like the leader of an imperial rogue state, more and more countries will begin to lean towards China, which will be perceived as the more rational, peaceful, rules-abiding great power." The ambassador's tweet has come true because Canada's shift to China is unprecedented and will have global ramifications. But unfortunately for the US, it may just be the tip of the iceberg. The Financial Times broke this story entitled, "Trump is making the world fall in love with China." Countries that once saw American success as their own now view the US as an adversary and Beijing as a model. Once again, this perfectly describes the situation in Canada. And this should be alarming to every US citizen because the data backs up these claims with considerable evidence. Don't believe me? Well, let's dive into the research and look at this report from the European Council on Foreign Relations entitled How Trump is Making China Great Again and What It Means for Europe. Because across the globe, most nations now have a very different opinion of both the United States and China. When citizens were asked, do you think China will have more or less global influence over the next decade, every single country responded positively that China will have more influence, with even 54% of Americans also feeling Beijing will only get stronger. When asked the question, what do you think about China? The majority of countries, including 51% of U.S. citizens, feel China is an ally or trusted partner with which we must strategically cooperate. But here are the truly shocking results of the survey. Because look at how the world now views the United States. The same countries were asked if they felt the U.S. was an ally to their country, and with the exception of India, every single country recorded a dramatic decline in how they viewed the U.S. Right now, only 16% of Europeans and only 25% of UK citizens think of the U.S. as an ally. And when you ask these same citizens if they feel the election of Donald Trump has been a good or bad thing for U.S. citizens, every single country responded negatively, showing a dramatic decline in Trump's popularity around the world. What's incredible about this survey is that it's from November 2025, long before the invasion of Venezuela and the increased threats to annex Greenland. Trump has no doubt shaken the globe, but the world is falling for China. Trump's major foreign policy theme for 2026 has been one of colonialism and expansionism. According to Stephen Miller, Trump's Homeland Security advisor, might makes right, and the United States will take new territory, annex whatever it wants, control the entire Western Hemisphere, and create a new world order. But this vision certainly doesn't align with Canadian values, and for some perspective on this, just listen to the words of Stephen Harper, who is widely known as the most pro-American Prime Minister in Canadian history. This really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets. You know, that's why we did sign the trade deals all around the world, Europe, Asia-Pacific, the Americas, and Canada has been, to be blunt. This is, nothing against the U.S. The reality is, independent of the current disputes, Canada has been, to use business term, and I'm in the investment business now, we have been grossly overweight the United States as a country, and there is no reason for that. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous. This clip from Stephen Harper is so important to understand Canada's shift away from the United States. Stephen Harper was the Canadian Prime Minister from 2006 to 2015 and oversaw one of the most prosperous times in Canadian economic history. The economy became so strong that even the Canadian dollar reached par with the US dollar in September 2007 under his leadership. Now, the main reason Harper's economy blossomed was in fact a much closer and deeper relationship with China. Harper expanded trade with China, and many Canadian industries like aluminum and timber skyrocketed in profits as the Canadians were able to export their products to the quickly developing Chinese economy. So in reality, Canada announcing a new shift to China is not something new. In fact, it should be seen as a revival of past foreign policy objectives. But what's remarkable to see is just how big a missed opportunity this is for the United States, because Canada has always been extremely loyal to U.S. interest. Don't forget, it was the Canadian government who arrested China's Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of the Huawei CEO, on behalf of the U.S. government for Donald Trump during his first term as U.S. president. Meng Wanzhou was under house arrest in Canada for nearly 3 years, causing significant tension between Canada and China, all for the benefit of the United States. You literally couldn't find a better and more reliable ally than Canada. But Trump has signaled to the world that his America First policy actually means America alone, and Canada is not the only country making new moves as a result. The EU just signed the world's largest free trade agreement with the two biggest economies of South America, Brazil and Argentina, along with Paraguay and Uruguay. This deal was 25 years in the making, but accelerated to the finish line because of Donald Trump's new foreign policy. Europe and China have also come together and finalized a price agreement for Chinese electric vehicles to enter the EU. Once again, this deal came about as a result of Donald Trump's trade war. But Canada's new trade deal with China is perhaps the most consequential because Canada has always been the little brother to the United States, and this new deal will change the future of the North American market. First, it reduces tariffs on two key products, EVs and canola oil, that will bolster trade between the two countries by several billion dollars a year. Second, it will slowly introduce a new breed of Chinese EVs to the North American market. As it stands right now, the United States is the only country in the world not importing Chinese EVs, but Canada will now allow 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the country, which represents 2.5% of the total Canadian auto market at a reduced tariff rate of just 6.1%, a massive drop from the 100% tariff Justin Trudeau passed against Chinese EVs in 2024. The world is already changing rapidly in 2026, and in just the first few weeks of the year, we've seen what feels like an entire year's worth of major geopolitical events unfold. Right now, the world's most powerful leaders have gathered in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum, and make no mistake, Davos 2026 will be dominated by one man, Donald Trump. But a major theme for 2026 is U.S. gold mining sponsorship, going to be precious metals. And just look at the reports from some of the world's biggest banks. HSBC just predicted gold could reach $5,000 an ounce in the first half of 2026 alone. JP Morgan expects averages around $5,555 an ounce by Q4 2026, with paths to over $5,400 in 2027. Goldman Sachs upgraded to $4,900 an ounce by the end of 2026, and Bank of America sees a clear shot at $5,000 an ounce in 2026. S&P Global Intelligence just published a report about severe copper shortages, and in this current bull market, I'm profiling a US-based gold and copper exploration company, which is the sponsor of today's video, US Gold Mining Inc., which trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol USGO. The company's flagship Whistler project is located in south-central Alaska, near Anchorage, and represents one of the largest undeveloped gold-copper projects in the region. With both gold and copper trading near record highs, here's why this project and the broader setup around it caught my attention. Because something important has changed in Washington. The policy environment has flipped. Instead of working against mining, the U.S. government is now actively supporting domestic resource development. And that shift is helping drive the rally we're seeing in mining stocks. Alaska is now clearly important for the Trump administration. In fact, Trump issued an executive order on day one of his presidency called Unleashing Alaska's Extraordinary Resource Potential. The administration then issued a second executive order called Immediate Measures to Increase American Mineral Production. The executive order directs government agencies to immediate action to facilitate domestic mineral production to the maximum extent possible, including copper and gold. Then in October 2025, something happened that sent a powerful signal to the market. The administration approved the Ambler Road project, a major piece of infrastructure designed to unlock access to critical mineral resources in northern Alaska. Now, the Whistler project is located in south-central Alaska. So this decision doesn't directly apply to it, but that's not the point. The approval sent a clear message. Alaska is open for business, and large-scale resource development is back on the table. In addition to federal support, state-level policies are also strong. Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy is a strong proponent of economic growth and the infrastructure to support mining in his state, and he has personally visited the Whistler project himself. Along with this support, the project was in 2025 visited by the Alaska delegation in Washington, including U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski and U.S. Representative Nick Begich. The Whistler Project mineral resource estimate comprises an estimated 294 million tons at 68 gram per ton gold equivalent for 6.48 million ounces of gold equivalent in the indicated category, plus 198 million tons at 65 gram per ton gold equivalent for 4.16 million ounces gold equivalent inferred. In addition to the gold component of this resource estimate, the deposit also contains copper and silver, which were both recently added to the list of critical minerals which are being prioritized for exploration and development by the Trump administration. Another reason why this gets interesting is the company's ownership structure is very unique. Just take a look. 78% of the outstanding shares are held by the parent company. One shareholder controls 78% of the shares. Another 4.5% is held by management and insiders. Several catalysts are lining up at the same time, which is why this project is now on my radar. We've now entered a Federal Reserve rate cut cycle. Precious and industrial metals like gold, copper, and silver are trading near record levels, and policy support at both the federal and state level is moving in a far more constructive direction. On top of that, Alaska is advancing new infrastructure plans, including the proposed West Susitna Access Project, which would improve connectivity between the Whistler Project and the Anchorage area. Another important milestone is now underway for the company. U.S. gold mining has begun work on an initial economic assessment, commonly referred to as a P, or Preliminary Economic Assessment. A P is an early-stage evaluation of potential economic factors, and while it's preliminary by nature, its timing is notable given current market conditions, with gold and copper trading near record levels. As always, please do your own research before investing in any company, and anyone interested should review U.S. Gold Mining's annual report and other filings with the SEC before making any investment decisions. I'll drop the links to everything you need to know down in the video description below. But as always, I want to thank you all for your incredible support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.